Millions were born in the baby boomer generation in Australia, and now that generation is coming up to retirement age. So as many boomers retire, downsize, and eventually die over the next 10 to 20 years, will their properties that they bought for 15 bucks and a carton of beer flood the market and finally bring some relief to the housing crisis? Or will the current nightmare for home buyers just continue to get worse? I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now this video isn't hating on boomers, it's only hating on those who haven't subscribed to my channel yet, because you're potentially missing out on the greatest content ever known to man. You know I'm lying. But seriously, you might as well hit that like and subscribe button. I'm sitting here on a bloody hot day, purposely not using the aircon because my last electricity bill was through the bloody roof. But nothing's a sacrifice for my viewers, you beautiful bloody people. Now let's consider Boomergeddon. And to help us do that, we're going to watch excerpts from this video titled "What Happens to the Real Estate Market When All Boomers Die?" published from the channel How Money Works.
It doesn't mean anything to be working class or middle class anymore. The only thing that matters is if you own a home or if you don't.
This is dead set spot on. It doesn't matter how much income you're earning, because if you don't own property, you're pretty much screwed financially. And that's because the value of property in general grows way faster than wages. So if you own property, you've got a tax-effective asset that grows exponentially in value, and the expenses required to own that property over time start to reduce, especially if you were able to purchase when properties were much cheaper. So your mortgage payments at the start might be relatively high, but over time they start getting less and less, which means you've got more disposable income to invest in things like more property or the stock market, which quite often means being in a great financial position when you retire. But if you don't own any property, you've got no tax effective asset that's growing in value, and your expenses start growing exponentially due to surging rent costs, which means you've got less and less disposable income to be able to make any sort of investment. Can you see now why home ownership is becoming the be all and end all of many people's financial success?
The home you live in now statistically makes more money than you do.
This is why working a full-time job can be so disillusioning to many people. You slug your guts out for some income and you get taxed massively before you receive even a cent. So you've got a heavily taxed income, you need to use that to pay ridiculous rent fees and crazy cost of living expenses, and somehow try to save for a deposit on a home that's growing by over 10% every year. But the real kicker is that you see homeowners make more from their properties than you do at your job, and on those gains they hardly pay any tax, and they didn't work harder than you to be able to easily afford that property. I've said it before and I'll say it again. What a kick in the bloody nutsack.
And the last hope that a lot of young people have to catch up is getting a house gifted to them by a relative.
Yep, receiving an inheritance is one of the only hopes of home ownership for many millions of people. And guess what? People are living longer and retirement expenses cost even more, so the inheritance some people receive might still not even be enough.
There's an old saying that the best time to start investing was 30 years ago. The second best time is right now.
And in Australia, as soon as the doctor smacks your bum and you start crying, you'll be asked, why haven't you bought a home yet? So pervasive is the obsession of home ownership in Australian society that you'll basically feel like a second-class citizen if you don't own property. And guess what? You'll pretty much be a second-class citizen in this country.
Buying a home at the right time could set you and your family up for financial security for the rest of your life. The only thing is, the right time was when you were still in school.
The right time was when boomers were buying their homes, because house prices in the 80s and 90s were extremely cheap compared to income. Australia back then was considered cheap compared to many global counterparts, but fast forward to today and we're considered one of the most expensive housing markets in the entire world. And the trouble for young people is the flux capacitor hasn't been invented, so you can't go back in time to buy those ultra cheap houses.
If you try and buy a home now, you will be taking on record high interest rates, record high prices, and record low availability all at the same time.
So people trying to buy today really have fuster-cluck conditions. We've got record house prices, with the average median home in Sydney around 14 times the average income, and prices in the other major cities like Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide getting close to 10 times the average income. So we've got ridiculous house prices and we've got high interest rates, which means buying a house is extremely hard because borrowing capacity has been destroyed. But if you do manage to buy one of these ultra expensive houses, your interest rate payments are going to be through the roof. On top of that, there's still crazy ridiculous demand for housing and lower available stock for buyers to choose from. But then you might find a place that you like and you think you can afford, only to find that you've been outbid by cashed up property owners or wealthy foreigners. It's no wonder that home buyers today would be feeling a little like this. And this. And also this.
What happens to the real estate market when all the boomers die?
Will there be a flood of properties hitting the market around the same time, helping to push house prices down?
If you're holding out hope that the biggest homeowning generation in America, downsizing will make it easier for people trying to buy their first home, I am here to do what I do best and crush your dreams with facts and figures. A survey of young homebuyers conducted by Freddie Mac and Bankrate asked why young people were waiting until later in life to buy a home.
I don't think that's intentional. Everyone would want to own their own home if they could, especially if you've experienced the current state of the rental market. It's a bloody nightmare.
I probably don't need to tell you that the #1 response was that people wanted to buy their first home sooner, but they couldn't afford it until they had paid off their student loans, progressed in their career, and had dedicated years of saving a down payment.
Or they just couldn't afford it, full stop. House prices in Australia, similar to Canada, are crazy expensive compared to the US. And for that reason, many young Australians have given up the hope of ever being able to afford their own home. And that's a freaking disgrace in my opinion. What have we become of a nation? We're literally robbing people of the opportunity for housing security. Come on, Australia, we can do better.
Some first-time homebuyers are contributing significantly less to their first purchase by using products like the Federal Housing Administration loan insurance, which allows first-time buyers to put down as little as 3% of the purchase price plus closing costs.
Here we're talking about different schemes that governments use to try to help first home buyers purchase their first home. In Australia, we've got the First Homeowner Grant, and Australia has a newish product called the First Home Guarantee, where you can purchase or build a new home with as little as 5% deposit or 2% if you're an eligible single parent. Now, I call these sort of schemes band-aid solutions because they do nothing to address the housing affordability crisis. In fact, they actually do the opposite by pushing up house prices even further. But it looks like the government's helping first home buyers, which is all that matters. Because trying to actually improve housing affordability is just a lot of hard work. It'll take a lot of effort, a lot of hard decisions that many people won't like. So we'll just put that in the too hard basket and make sure that Bunnings and BCF have plenty of tents so people can enjoy some well-earned camping when they can't afford their rent any longer.
If you are someone who wants to buy their first home, these offers may look like they are there to help you out, but they are actually just making the problem even worse.
Worse for the population, but better for the government because it gives them more opportunities to get re-elected. Because if any Australian government implements any policy that could even potentially reduce house prices, you're gone! Out of there!
The only people these lending products are really helping out are the people who already own multiple properties, which according to Redfin are mostly baby boomers who own $18 trillion worth of real estate.
Boomers win again. Financially wise, boomers have just timed the market to perfection. They knew when to be born, they knew when to buy those ultra cheap houses and just ride the wave of exceptional gains, and now they can just sit back while everyone squabbles over the few available properties for sale, sending their property portfolios through the roof. And on top of that, they get to enjoy high interest rates on their savings that they've been able to accumulate due to ultra low living expenses, while new home buyers get slugged with outrageous repayments on their $1 million loans. It's all about timing. Why weren't you born earlier?
These products are meant for first-time homebuyers who want to buy a basic home, so that's fair enough. But all that it really does is pump up the price of affordable homes until they become unaffordable again.
Australia has very few cities with affordable housing anymore. Before COVID, Perth Perth had some quite affordable housing, but now even their housing market has been destroyed by speculative demand. Those with deep pockets buy up all the affordable housing so that nothing's left for those people just wanting to own their own home.
But repayments on a house that is more expensive than it should be because of a loan product like this have to be paid every month for the next 30 years. The only real winners are the people that purchased these homes when they were a quarter of their current value and can now sell them to buyers with risky financing.
Winning!
The small number of families that own multiple pieces of real estate as rental properties or holiday homes is growing. Homes are being kept by a small handful of children from wealthy families as investment properties, often in addition to the homes that they already own themselves.
So what we're seeing is that people who already own a lot of property are able to keep buying more and more houses, thus property ownership is becoming more concentrated by the ultra wealthy. So some have many houses while more and more people have zero houses. And that's why countries like Australia are seeing a great divide between the haves and the have-nots. Wealth inequity is rising up because it doesn't matter how hard you work, all that matters is if you own some of that delicious property.
Property?
And for those who don't own property, let them eat cake. And if things continue down this dangerous path, we may well see a revolution.
If you think you just need to wait out the boomers to finally afford a home, unfortunately, the statistics say that their estates are only going to become more concentrated in the hands of fewer people.
So boomers' homes could be snapped up by other wealthy boomers? Wouldn't that be ironic? Hey, what's better than tax-effective property gains? More tax-effective property gains.
Some families are going to leave multiple homes to a few children. Some families are going to make big sacrifices to help their children. Some families don't have enough to help at all, and some families are going to need support from their children.
What you receive as an inheritance could play a massive part in your financial future.
So, baby boomers are going to leave their homes behind, but they will mostly be leaving them to their already wealthy children.
And this way, the Australian housing Ponzi can continue, with those who bought ultra cheap being at the top of the Ponzi. And when they transfer those properties to their children get elevated now to the top of the Ponzi so the cycle can continue. And those at the bottom of the Ponzi, which now represents millions of people, won't be receiving much inheritance and have to all basically fight over the housing scraps.
Probably not the story you wanted to hear, but I couldn't give up on an opportunity to shit on your dreams to get 2024 started on the right note.
The housing market, where your dreams get shit on. I'm Biko Konstantinos.